Gamers, today we're going to be making a French guide. I haven't done one in forever, to be honest. And the reason why I haven't done the French one is because not much has changed. Now, I have actually done, maybe even last season, the COC, COC of course, the COC guide. Now, here and there I do that build, but French has still kind of remained the old French from my old guides, which was like season 2 or season 1. And the most standard playstyle for French is 2 town centers into Feudal all-in, putting heavy pressure. So the good old standard French style is what is usually being played. Now here in this one, I'm going to show you a 1 TC French pressure because I get questions sometimes, is 1 TC French possible or not? It is. If you're playing French, civs that I would suggest for example, I'm just going to go through the matchups and what you can do, 1 or 2 TC, and you know, what the best thing is. So against English, I would definitely suggest 2 town centers. No reason to stay on 1. You can go 2 very easily after defending the initial push. You add a second town center, you go on from there. You don't ever almost need to add 3 town centers French in any matchup because you're probably just being super greedy. And the more town centers you add, you know, the possibility of staying in Feudal kind of goes away and you want to fight in Feudal. In a French mirror, you can stay on 1 or go 2 TCs. Both are fine. Against Rus, 2 TC for sure. Against Mongol, 2 TC is the way to go. Against HRE, you can go 1 or 2. Against Abbasid, I would definitely suggest to go at least 2 and then put a lot of pressure. You can stay on 1, but you're committing more to kind of like all in, even though you're all inning in Feudal, but it's like even more all in than that. Delhi, I would suggest you stay on 1 TC for the reasons I'm going to talk about in this game. Against China, you can stay on 1 or 2. You can just commit to 1 and super duper all in, or you can go 2 and still all in, but kind of like a little bit of a delayed all in. Or you can go the trade landmark, which is what I like doing against China because they usually stay in their base for long, so your trade kind of starts to do quite well. Against Malian, I would probably say 2 TC because Malian usually won't put pressure super early on you, so you have time for that second TC. And against Ottoman, I would probably say 1 or 2 is fine. Now, when does it depend if you go 1 or 2? Well, against civs that you have time to get a second TC without taking damage, you can go 2 TC. And also against civs that are maybe more boomy, you have that option. Do I stay 1? Do I stay 2? Going 1 TC in most matchups, like I said, is also okay. But you're just committing to super fast push and super big all in. And the problem is, if you don't do severe damage to your opponent, you will fall behind. Now, the difference between 1 TC and 2 TC is with 2 TC, French has a passive, this is the civ's passive, your villagers are getting produced faster. So in Dark Age, it's 18 seconds for villager production. In Feudal, it's 17. In Castle, it's 16. And I think Imperial is 15, if I'm not mistaken. So what does that mean? Well, if you are 2 TC in Feudal Age and the opponent is 2 TC, you will be producing a lot more villagers over time. And this is the biggest strength of French. It's forcing your opponent to stay on the equal amount of town centers, and then you're slowly building up your lead with extra villagers. So the only thing you have to do is put pressure on the opponent, force them to stay in Feudal Age, while you're slowly getting ahead economically by building up the villager lead. And that's kind of how you play French in a nutshell. That's kind of the goal of the French and what you're, you know, aiming to do. Like, you don't want to go 2 TC French and rush Castle. You're not getting anything out of that. 2 TC and then try to stay in Feudal and fight with your opponent. Now, I do have guides on 2 TC, but in general, the way you do 2 TC is like you do it with any other civ, except with French. As you're aging up with 4 villagers on your landmark, you want to go for wheelbarrow as you're aging up, and you want to leave like 10 villagers on food for a second TC in order to make 2 knights. So once you get enough to age up, once you get wheelbarrow, you want to get 200 extra gold for 2 knights because you want to be harassing your opponent while getting a second TC. And the moment you have enough stone for second TC, you just resume putting villagers on gold and then you rally villagers on, you have about 6 to 8 on gold, and you rally on food and wood, and then you add archers, you add more knights, and so on and so forth. The reason I'm telling all of this now is, like I said, this game will be 1 TC, but just kind of gave you a quick intro to the 2 TC. After that, you play it just like if it was 1, right? The difference between 1 and 2 TC is not that complicated. You just get an extra town center, and you have more economy, and you need a little bit more food for villagers. After that, you play it exactly the same. A lot of people think that because you get 2nd TC, you're supposed to defend. That is not the case. So anyway, let's get started. So, number one thing with French, if you are playing French or want to play French, is you need to harass. That's the whole point of the Civ. You need to be active on the map. If you're someone that likes map control and you like contesting resources on the map, you should play French, because that's what the Civ is made for. And it's probably the best or second best Civ in Feudal for that. Which is why, you know, if you're someone that's playing aggressive, you want to go for the Civ. If you're someone that's more passive and maybe you like to stay in your base, French is probably not the Civ for you. So, we're going to start with 7 on food, and we're going to start rallying to gold on 4, and then we're going to continue rallying onto the food. Now, this is the 1 TC version. Again, I'm going to show you guys the cutoff point where I would go for 2nd TC if I wanted to. But in this matchup, I will not be going for 2nd TC because Delhi goes out on the map very early to contest sacred sites. So basically what happens is, if I go 2 TC, the Delhi will be able to capture 3 sacred sites, and I won't have enough units yet to contest it. So even though I'm on 2 TC, Delhi will be getting so many resources with 2 sacred sites that I will actually fall behind being on 2 town centers. Which is why most top players in this matchup just stick to 1 TC, because if you stay on 1 TC and you prevent Delhi from taking the sacred sites, then you're both on 1 TC. They have free upgrades, sure, but you are building up a villager lead over time. So as long as you're not losing villagers and you kill a villager here and there, you will be ahead. Now, this is not something I would say do every game. But if you scout your deer pack somewhat early in the game, you can go for early deer. Now be careful, there's always a close deer pack and a far deer pack on Dry Arabia or Lipany. So this is the close deer pack, you can see it's 1 screen away. This one would be way too far away to go for immediately, but you can go for deer in Dark Age, and you also want to get survival techniques with French because you will be going on boars, deer, and you're just going to get a lot of value. Now, if you're playing against English that can open men-at-arms, or against Ottoman that can open with military school, or Mongol, don't do this. But against civs that don't have Dark Age pressure, you can do this, because the faster you get rid of this deer, it gives less chance for the opponent to harass your food sources, and also having deer is a lot more income than sheep. Now, I got a lucky spawn here where my boar was here, so I managed to pull it onto the deer. And this is the first time that I've ever done this, but I had I had boar in Dark Ages French, which is a new thing for me. But the same thing would work if I just went on deer and, you know, just as normal, right? But if you don't find deer or whatever, just stay on sheep. It's not a big issue, so don't worry about it too much. So because I am on boar, I have 8 on food, but that's because boar gives you a lot more resources. In general, your worker split would be 7 food, 4 on gold, and then you rally onto the food until you have 10, and you're gonna keep rallying once you build the H2 landmark, School of Cavalry, with 4. You're gonna keep rallying villagers on food until you have 10, because 10 will allow you to make those 2 knights that you need and that you want. After that, you're gonna rally onto the wood. But like I said, this game, because boar gives me more income, I started rallying on wood a bit earlier. So, let's speed it up. Now, this guide is pretty much to show you how to play one town center. It's not so much like the exact build order, because again, this game is, you know, already wild with the boar. It's more of a guide for French, because not much has changed build order wise. It's more of a guide how to engage and how to fight your opponent. in Feudal Age, like which spice to take, where to go, and so on and so forth. So, I'm aging up with 5 here. You want to age up with 4. The reason why I'm aging up with 5 is because I have 4, so I can afford to do that and get my landmark a bit faster. Now, if you look at my resources, I, what's it called? I'm making a Royal Knight, and I had 70 extra gold, so I would have had an extra 110 gold right now. If I was going for 2 town center, let's assume this is a 2 town center game, that I wanted to go for 2 TC. I would have 10 villagers on food until I get these 2 knights out. Then, the moment I get 200 bonus gold for the 2 knights, the one that I'm making now and the extra one, I would pull away from the gold. These guys, I would put them on wood until I have 8 or 9 on wood. And then I'm going to put villagers on stone. And then I'm going to get a second TC on the deer pack or on the boar, whichever has a good position. Then you would be putting back on the gold up until you, let's say, have 6 workers, rally onto the wood and food after. And your whole goal is to start making archer ranges and stables and just make knights, make archers, get other eco upgrades like double broadaxe and yada yada. Now in this game, because I am staying 1 TC, what I decided to do is I'm making a knight and I'm immediately getting double broadaxe because I know I'm going to be making a lot of archers, so I'm going to get that upgrade nice and early. And I already have survival techniques and wheelbarrow. So, you can see right now, usually you want to have a bit more on food. But because I'm on 4, you can see how much food it gives me, which is really nice. Look at that, 420. He has 433, and he's got 14 villagers. Boar's pretty good. So the first night comes out. What do you do with the first night? 99% of the time, oh, sorry. You immediately send the knight across the map. Now, I know that he opened with Dome of Faith, so the first thing I want to check... Oh, he actually went an interesting build. Oh yeah, he went with like Pro Scouts Delhi. He was, I guess, trying something something new, and he went for Late Sanctity and went for No Mosque. So anyway, the first thing you want to check is gold. In most matchups, the gold is the easiest one to harass unless the opponent is like open on the deer or something, right? But you usually want to check the gold and the stone and see if you can kill a villager. When you do a charge on a villager, make sure once the charge goes off to attack the same villager after, because French charge plus auto attack kills that villager, okay? You can already see I'm making an archer range immediately because he has to make spears. Every opponent you play against will have to make spears unless they are Rus. They can also just produce knights. In which case, I would say against Rus and in a French mirror, you probably don't want archer range. You probably want barracks or more knights. But I would suggest barracks plus stables against Rus and against French. But any other civ, you can just throw down blind archer range and start producing archers to counter the spearmen. So, right here, I'm trying to do some damage. I can't find any. I'm going to speed up a little bit. I'm gathering my knights because now he has Ghazi Raiders. And I don't want to go with alone knights around. Now, harassing is a lot stronger. I can potentially pick off 3 villagers at the same time. So what is my goal? I'm just building up, and it would be the same if I went to TC. If I went to TC, instead of 3, I would have 2 knights roaming around and trying to do damage. That's what French is all about. Because I went for this early boar and early deer, I'm going to set my rally point there. Why? Because...
1 year game ruining guides Kappa.
Because I know that the opponent saw that I'm on deer, so it doesn't make sense. A lot of people make the mistake of they rally like here. But what does that do? It doesn't do anything, right? So you should either rally on gold, if that's exposed part, or you can rally to the deer pack. And I rally here because this one's more exposed, and if I was him, I would attack here. So if there's any Ghazi Raiders trying to harass, I'll have units over there. So right now, I think this is the point where I see the multiple scouts and I realize he's going pro scouts. Now, some civs go pro scouts, not too many, it's not really a meta. You can go for it with Delhi because it's free. And now I see 3-4 scouts, and I was like, okay, he's gonna do that. Now, look at this. The only thing I'm doing is I'm just running around. And earlier, like, obviously he can't be on gold because of the knights, but now I'm forcing some idle time, and I'm not really doing much. Like, I'm not committing super hard. He just has to run villagers around, otherwise, you know, he's gonna take some losses. He's also forced to produce spearmen. And if you look at unit counts, right? He had to produce so many spearmen. He's on 10 spearmen already, and has to stay in the base because of the potential of knights. Behind this, I'm gonna start pushing out because I feel like I have enough units to do some pressure to the opponent. Still gathering here. I got 2 stables, and soon I'm gonna add more archer ranges as well. And blacksmith is done, getting +1 range attack. Now, most of the games, I would say most, you will be getting steel arrow upgrade first. The reason for that is, in this situation, even if he had spearman archer, I would preferably have steel arrow because I'm the one that's being aggressive, and I have a lot of archers, so I want to make sure I can pick up the spearman. Now, if you're playing against English or someone that like opened archers for some reason, you definitely want to get +1 ranged armor first. The reason why I say against English is because they will obviously be making a lot of longbows, and longbows do a lot of damage, so reducing any damage they do is going to be a big one for you. So, what do you want to do with knights and archers? If you look, even before the fight started, I have archers in one control group, and I have knights and scout in the other. So, if you select my archers, you can see they are shift queued onto the units. So, I don't need to micro the archers initially, right? I already pre-ordered the commands, and now the archers are going to go ham on his units. Your goal, always with French, is to go knights plus archers, use archers to pick up spearmen, and use your knights to block the other units. And once the spearman count is getting lower, then you full engage. So, right now, you can see I'm trying to charge and clear whatever I can for the archers, while letting archers do the damage on spearmen. See that? I intercept the Ghazi Raider, I hit it a couple of times, and here, again, he's pressured back. He's trying to get the deer. I managed to like deny him that. He gets off berries as well. And again, it might not seem like a lot, but nothing has happened, right? Nothing has happened this game. I didn't kill anything. I am already 3 workers ahead from just French passive of villagers making faster. I have eco upgrades. He has, you know, an eco upgrade more, but it's not a big deal. I have more military upgrades, and he is pushed out berries. He's constantly moving these villagers on wood, and eventually he will run out of food, right? Whatever civ he was, if you put enough pressure on your opponent is French, they will run out of food, and once that happens, your lead extends quite a bit. So, I'm adding more archer ranges. And I'm still not getting under Iron Mesh because I don't plan to dive under town centers. I don't plan to go super aggressive. I'm just trying to deny the pro scouts and trying to, you know, poke and do damage wherever I can. Now he's going to go for my side of the deer. And what I'm doing right now is I actually, because I didn't see his units here, so I was like, oh, maybe he's going for my deer pack on this side. Because obviously I knew he has pro scouts. He has some Ghazi Raiders here. I put 2 knights to auto attack and let them chase that. And I think this is the point where I see that the deer are being killed. I turn around. I intercept it. Now I don't think I kill anything here. Or maybe I kill 1, but he doesn't drop the deer pack. Yeah, I kill 1. So that's denied. My rally point is on deer that I mentioned earlier. So I didn't even have to do anything here. It got defended on its own. And now the pressure continues. Now if you look at the army, you might think like, oh, he has more army. Why doesn't he just fight? Well, that's the thing with archers. Once you engage into archers, the better you get at microing them, it is harder and harder for the opponent to engage into archers. Because every time the opponent goes in, if he's not sure he can win the fight, you will trade way better. Like, you can pick off 10 units by the time he retreats. So, even though he has more army, also my army is 33 versus 44, but 33 of that is 12 knights, which is obviously a lot stronger than his 11 Ghazi Raiders. So here, he tries to pick up these 2 knights. I regroup my units, and now that's a serious amount that we're dealing with. Now, another thing about French is great in lower numbers, but it's also great in high numbers. It's kind of like English in that sense. Like, English is great if you have like 3-4 longbows and 1 spearman early on, but it also scales and stacks really well. Where it's like if you have 40 longbows, like that's a problem for the opponent, because then you're one-shotting like knights and horses and whatever else. French is very similar, because the more knights you have, every volley that you shoot with your archers, you're killing like 3-4 spearmen at a time. And few volleys, you might kill enough spearmen to just mow everything down with your knights after. It's like you don't even need the archers. Now, if you are taking outside sources, food sources like this, I would definitely suggest you do this. You don't need to risk. You're the one putting pressure. You don't need to risk your economy. So, if I'm taking this deer pack, that's pretty far. He took 4, remember? I'm going to take 5 villagers, make a tower, make a mill, and then forget about those. If opponent ever harasses there, I can just garrison and defend with knights, right? Because whatever units he has, I can defend with knights. If he has a whole army, then I can sandwich his whole army and kill it. If I'm going to go on these berries, I'm also going to make a tower. If I'm going on these berries, maybe I'll skip it because it's kind of in the back, you know, so it's harder to access for the opponent, but you kind of get the point. Another thing that I would suggest, even if sometimes you can go for the opponent's boar, like in this case, I could have gone for the opponent's boar. I would still probably go with just 5 and make a tower to make sure I don't lose villagers. French, if nothing happens, you are getting ahead if you're on the same amount of town centers. So always try to remember that. You don't need to take unnecessary risks, if that makes sense. And now if you look, even though he has more army supply, when you compare these armies, I would always want to have this army instead. Now, another interesting part that I don't see a lot of people talk about, but when you are playing against French, you have to go archers at a point. Why? Because if your opponent is fully committing to spearman horsemen or spearman Ghazi Raiders or whatever, right? Let's say its opponent is Abbasid and they're going spearman horsemen. If I make 2 barracks and I have knights and archers, I auto win the game with spearmen because he has no counter to the spearmen. All his horsemen are going to be in trouble. I have archers for his spearmen and I have knights against horsemen or spearmen in low numbers. So most of the time when you face good players, they will be adding archers versus you. And someone asked me in the Twitch chat, why is he adding archers? That doesn't make sense because you have knights and archers. So why is he making archers? Well, if he doesn't and I go spears and he fully commits to like full melee comp, he will auto lose the game because the spearmen are going to completely destroy him. Now, you might say, yes, but he can just add archers then, right? Well, yes, but I've been making archers the whole time, so I'm going to have like 40 archers and he's going to have 4. So at that point, making archers is pointless. So right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to, again, deny resources. A lot of people make a mistake of, oh, I'm going to make rams and kill my opponent. I am already winning at this point because I am denying the berries here. I denied some of the carcasses. I'm checking if he's on gold. I'm going to leave 1 knight here, lowest HP, so he can heal over time and patrol there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for the attack because I am getting my iron undermash and I'm feeling in a pretty good position to do so. So this was a bit unfortunate for me. As I moved out, he went in. I did end up losing, I think, 3 villagers. And I lost some archers. So not the perfect game. He gets us around here a little bit. But I managed to not kill anything. But a lot of his Ghazi Raiders are low HP. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to rally my units here. And defend with that. But I make another mistake. And I just want to show you that even when you make mistakes, it's alright. Everyone makes mistakes. Just play better. After you make a mistake, just play better. So what happens is I immediately pull, I shift Q, because I thought that my archers and my rally points are in range of the gold mine. But apparently, when my gold miners got killed, the units were just AFK. Because in my mind, I'm protecting it with rally points. So I ended up losing like 8 more villagers. Now, here, what is my goal? He doesn't need gold. He doesn't need stone. So the only 2 resources I can attack are wood and food. Now, I know he's been pro scouting, so I know he probably has food under his TC. So the next best thing I can attack is wood. And this is something you have to figure out on your own. If opponent is playing a gold heavy civ, always attack the gold. If the opponent is running out of food, make sure that he is not on any outside food sources. Like, make sure to check all the berry patches, the deer packs, and so on and so forth. Because I know that he has pro scouts, I have a knight here, I decided to attack the wood line. So again, I'm going to try to pick up as many spearmen, and you're going to see a lot of interesting engagements and micro being done, and a lot of back and forth. And this is how you want to micro your French army. So I'm picking off whatever I can. Now, if I have a stack of units without using any formation, the archers will most likely attack 1 or 2 spearmen and overkill a massive amount. So what I do is I use Z formation, aka line formation, so that when his spearmen run through, the archers don't overkill the 1 or 2 spearmen, but instead they do max amount of damage as possible. So if you look, they shot 2 spearmen right there. Now his spearmen are spreading, so the next shot was gonna hit 4. See that? Okay, it hit 2 and a little bit on the third one. So that's why line formation is really good, because you don't overkill as much. Now, what you're going to see, oh my god, they're yelling so much. I'm gonna just move here for a second. What you're going to see is I'm gonna use line formation on archers. I'm gonna attack the spearmen. When the spearmen go back, which is what the enemy is supposed to do, you want to charge in with knights. Ideally, you want to get the charge off because charge does so much damage. Then he's going to bring back the spearmen, you're going to pull back your knights, and then you're going to kite with archers. The moment his spearmen go back, you're charging with the knights again. And it's kind of like a mini dance that you're going to do. And this is what French is all about. The better you do this, the more games you're going to win. And this is something you need to know how to do. Now, you don't have to do it perfectly. You can see right here, I'm shooting with the archers. I pick off the Ghazi Raider with the knights. I'm kiting. The moment he starts running back, I follow. And now, because he has no more Ghazi Raiders, the micro becomes a lot easier for me. This is where I lost all the villagers, like I mentioned earlier. So you can see he killed 13 villagers. It is what it is. I was like, that's not good. I just gotta play better. Even better, right? But trading so far has been pretty decent for me, in my opinion, regarding the army. So here we go again. I'm bringing my whole army. And remember, if you have ranged units and knights, you can kite and you can kind of disengage and pick your fights a lot better than your opponent. Your opponent has to fully commit in order to fight your army. So look at that. I get my charge off on the Ghazi Raiders. I kill 2 Ghazi Raiders and I damage the 3rd, and then I go back. Ghazi Raiders are faster, right, than the Spearmen. So even though here the Ghazi Raiders and Spearmen were together, now I move back. Ghazi Raiders are alone again. So I'm going to turn around, hit the Ghazi Raiders again, while I'm microing, shooting the Spearmen, and then I'm going to micro back again. So here we go. I hit him once, I kill like 2 more Ghazi Raiders or 3, and I keep kiting. Now he's losing way more. If you look right here, he lost 3 Ghazi Raiders, like 5-6 Spearmen. I lost an archer and a knight. So he has to go back. Once he goes back, what do? I immediately charge. Why? Because I want his Spearmen to come forward so I can kill them. See that? Now, I don't want to spook anyone, right? I don't want people, I'm gonna move again. I don't want people to think, oh my god, I gotta play perfect to play French. You have to take into consideration that this is like top level of French versus Delhi. This, you don't need to micro perfectly like this. I'm just showing you guys what the idea is, what you're supposed to do. Obviously, you're not gonna do anything close to this, and that's okay. I don't mean that as a, you know, an insult or burn, but you're not gonna be anywhere close to doing this. But that is what you should be aiming towards, and that's what your goal should be. Now, at the same time, if you're thinking, oh my god, I gotta do so much to win with French, have in mind that if you're playing in gold or platinum or diamond, your opponent is not going to be microing his archers perfectly like Poppy Paw is doing and then pulling back the spearmen. Most of the time your opponent is just going to A-move everything and his spearmen are going to run in and die to your archers, right? So they're not going to have that perfect micro either. So have that in mind. Now again, look at that. The chase continues. I am target firing the spearman, and his spearman count is getting very, very low. Now, you might think, well, 11 spearmen is still quite a bit. Well, 11 spearmen versus 15 knights is not very good for him. Now, this is the point where even though he has more army, I can commit and I can attack and I can fight now. Because I have more knights than he has spearmen, and at that point you can fully commit and go for the opponent. So I think this is the point where I just engage. And all his spearmen are getting dented down. You can see my knights are still doing well. And now suddenly the fight is completely won. So you might think like, oh, what happened? It was even and now you're winning kind of thing. All the spearmen picking off reduced his spearman count. I kept my knight count high. And eventually you will just have enough knights where you can overwhelm your opponent. And now because I have all the pressure, I'm going to have some knights go back to heal up. And I think I send a knight here soon. I try to poke into the wood line, and again, look at this. I'm going in. What do? I don't wait for the fight to start. I shift Q immediately onto the spearman so that I can control my knights properly. Spearman number 1, spearman number 2, spearman number 3. And now I can A-move my knights, and I move my archers in, and I do stutter step micro. I'm picking off some villagers. And this is where I'm starting to do actual economic damage and getting further and further ahead. If you have the micro, I would definitely advise you to micro your knights back like this on low HP and just send them back home and allow them to heal. Now, this is the best part about French. So you might be wondering, well, how do I end games? That's cool, but you're not doing anything, right? Well, if I didn't lose 13 villagers like an idiot, this game is over already, because I would be on 58 villagers and he would be on 46. Needless to say, you know, game's over. But this is the strength, and this is how you end the games as French and how you extend your lead. So I don't need to make rams. I don't need to make rams and destroy, you know, Dome of the Faith. What do I get out of it? Nothing. What you need is you need to deny the food sources. So what my goal is here, to attack the wood line, I have a knight here, so I know he's not in these berries. So my pressure point here is going to be wood line and this berry patch. If at any point I were to see my opponent here, I would rotate my army immediately and attack him there. Because if he doesn't have food, he can't produce army. Meanwhile, I got 2 deer packs, although he stole some deer here. I got 3 berry patches on my side. I got boar, and I can also go for his boar a little bit later. So, my knights here are healing, making sure I'm not taking any damage. I'm gonna send these guys home. Anytime you can save knights, you can see I'm sending the low HP knights home. It's gonna take a bit, but you're literally saving 240 resources every time you heal up a knight. So here, I decide to check the berry patch. And I know at this point he is either about to run out of food or he already ran out of food. And if you look at his base, he got 2 deer under TC and that's it. He's got no food here. I know he's not here. So right now, a lot of people are like, oh my god, okay, I did damage, so I'm gonna go castle. If I went to castle and he keeps making units, he will push me out of his base and then he will go back to the food and the game continues, right? But instead, what you do is you just keep making units, brother. Just keep making units, just keep massing units. Because I'm gathering the food freely and he is not. And that's kind of the whole point. I'm even protecting these deer a bit. I got knights here, I got knights here. I'm just chilling right now. So in a moment, I'm gonna regather my forces, and it's kind of getting, I mean, 16 knights, 17 knights versus 4 spearmen. And if you look at this game, you might be like, well, how do you have so much more when he killed 13 villagers? And that's because I am freely gathering all my stuff while he's kind of stuck. So right now, I know he's not here. I know he's not on the deer. I know he's not on this side. Not yet. He's gonna be soon. So I decide to go for the wood line. And here, I think I'm gonna split off a knight. Again, I get a charge off. I dent in some units. Line formation on the archers. I get a charge off. I could have probably committed here already. There was only like 9 spearmen. But I take a knight here. He's denting the villagers. The knight here prevented the villagers from going, which I saw, by the way, in game. So immediately what I do is I know that he's gonna go there next to try to get it, so I rally my units on that side. He's losing villagers. I know that now he's not chopping wood either, so the next place he can chop wood is here, which gives me another point of attack, which is going to be a really good one for me because this is away from his TC and it's in front of his base. The knight here is doing work, and now the worker count is getting worse and worse. You can see the villagers are idle, running around. We're trading on this side. All the villagers are just at this point running. He's on these berries and he is steering. Meanwhile, on my side, I still got these berries. I still got these berries. I can take the boar. And what do I decide to do? Well, those berries are looking pretty good, so I'm gonna take those. I'm gonna just go take his berries and put my rally point here in order to defend that. Now, I'm picking off a shit ton of villagers. I'm letting my knights tank so I can kill the villagers behind it. And then the knights are gone. I run away. And I think I was trying to find the boar here because I didn't scout this part of the map, so I didn't know where the boar is. I find out the boar. I get 8 villagers immediately. Kill that, and that's another 2k food with sick income per minute for food. I build a tower for a little bit of vision. And at this point, there is nothing he can do. If he tried to, by the way, if you're wondering, what if he aged up at some point? If he aged up, he wouldn't have anywhere close to the amount of units in order to defend what I was doing. If he aged up, what's his plan? I would just attack the gold. He wouldn't be able to produce knights, men-at-arms, or crossbows. Then I can attack the food sources, and he just wouldn't have enough. And again, I'm running through here because I know that he needs wood, so I'm checking both wood lines. Again, he has got 28 villagers idle. He has no spearmen, and you can see, like, I've been producing units the whole time. He has not. And that's GG. See that? Not a single ram made. An opponent taps out. Not a single ram. You don't need rams. So, whenever you play feudal, not just French, especially French, but whenever you play feudal aggression, this is how you should be playing it. This is how you should be engaging whenever you have cavalry units. You should always try to do a charge, whether you have horsemen or not. You should always try to do charge and then get the archers to kill the spearmen. Now, I do want to say one thing. Sometimes with French, you will be going horsemen instead of knights, maybe against English super early on. If you're playing against English, which is a very common matchup, you should be going horseman archer, not knight archer. You can make one knight to do the harassment or 2 knights to do harassment, but it's a lot better to make horsemen against English. Why? Because your goal against English is to actually kill the longbows. Not, I mean, obviously you want to kill the spearmen, but you're going to be playing a little bit different against English because longbows do so much damage. You're going to want horsemen, and your goal is to pick off spearmen with your archers, and then have your horsemen get a surround on the longbows. I always make rams to end the game. I know, you're not the only one. A lot of people in lower leagues do, and at the top level you almost never make rams, because you don't need to make rams. If you deny all their food, they're gonna leave the game. Or you can then just dive on their TC and kill everything. So, yeah. Now, after this, if the game extends and you don't quite you don't quite manage to end your opponent, the game goes on. Let's say you're on 1 or 2 TCs. Eventually, you will slowly add farms, you will slowly get castle, and continue this exact gameplay. You don't need to change anything up. You don't need to slow down in castle. The moment you get castle, get your upgrades and continue your aggression. Now, regarding landmarks in castle and imperial, in castle, if you are having a lot of knights and you want to end game in castle, maybe you're playing against a civ that you don't want to play against in the imperial, get Royal Institute, get Royal Bloodlines, and try to end the game. If you're playing against a different civ and maybe you don't have as many knights, so getting that Royal Bloodlines is not going to give as much value, you can go for Guildhall. Or maybe you just like playing Imperial, you should go for Guildhall because it will give you a lot more value over time. Obviously, Royal Institute is useless the moment you hit the Imperial. And regarding Imperial landmarks, pretty much 99.9% of the times, Red Palace is way better, and that's because of the recent buff to Red Palace that gives all town centers and keeps the crossbow shot, which is really, really, really good. There's a question in chat, would you make French crossbows in castle instead of archers? See, the sad part is French crossbows are the best crossbows in the game by far, but the sad part is you almost never ever make them. The reason why you almost never ever make them is because your main goal is to kill spearmen. Your knights will kill everything else. You need to kill spearmen and crossbows. If you want to kill spearmen and crossbows, the best units for that are archers. The only time where you would make crossbows is maybe if you played a mirror match, like French versus French, or French versus Rus to kill the enemy knights. But in general, archers will be better. Or against HRE, sure. You can do crossbows against HRE, even if they make spearmen, because most of the time they will be mixing in men-at-arms and knights, right? But more often than not, you're going to stick with archers. You also, if you have too much gold, you can make crossbows, right? But yeah, you kind of get the point. Now, another thing that you might have noticed, when I was building buildings, I didn't actually show it, but you want to be building buildings in a way that you can plant a keep in between them, in between your archer ranges and stables. Because if the game goes to castle, your first keep that you want to make is in between all your buildings so that you can reduce the cost of all your units, because it's actually quite good and it's basically like an economic boost because you will be spending less units or less resources on your units, aka have more units. And that's it. If you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you need reference to 2 town center builds, I have older guides that you can check out. There are 2 town centers. But again, it's nothing complicated. You just get same start as you normally would with any French build. You get 2 knights, then you get stone, you make a TC, and then you make knights and archers, and you go for it. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much for watching. Check my Twitch, probably live right now. If you're watching on Twitch, let's keep going.